Hello and welcome. You're watching Newsline. This is Business Plus. We are getting you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, let's begin with markets. Markets, Suyash, how are they panning out this afternoon?
So Shweta, after opening in the positive territory with moderate gains, Indian markets failed to hold on to those gains and succumbed to profit booking and ended lower in today's session. Now at close, Nifty was down about 0.29% at 19,386 levels, as you can see. It touched an intraday high of 19,584, which is in line with what the experts were saying, that Nifty will face some resistance at 19,600 levels. But what is also concerning is that Nifty failed to hold on to 19,400 levels, which it was able to scale earlier in the week. Now Sensex also ended with losses of about 0.28%. It managed to hold the 65,250 levels. The 30 share index surged, touched an intraday high of 65,913 and an intraday low of 65,181. The broader markets were mixed today. Nifty mid-cap 100 ended with gains of about 0.24% at 38,789, whereas a small cap index saw some profit booking and was down about 0.35% at 11,918 levels.
All right. Also joining us on this show is Santosh Meena, who's a senior research analyst at Swastika Investment. Santosh, thanks very much for taking time out this afternoon and for speaking to Newsline. I want to begin by asking what exactly happened with the markets today. Some positive terrain, positive territory that the markets conquered, however, ending on a flattish note there.
Yeah, first of all, good evening, everyone. So actually, there was a lot of positive news. When there is too much positivity, there is risk of profit booking. And technically, after a correction, we were bouncing back, and Nifty and Bank Nifty both halted near their 20-day moving average. In always market first attempt, market halts at 20-day moving average. Therefore, we saw profit booking from that level. So again, there is a risk that Nifty may slip below 19,300 level. If Nifty falls below 19,300 level, then we can expect a fall towards 19,000, 18,880 levels. Nifty has to cross 19,550 level decisively to conquer towards 19,800 level. So for timing, we were in correction mode, and we saw a bounce back, and Nifty and Bank Nifty both halted near their 20-day moving averages.
All right. Are you anticipating a breach of the 19,300 support level anytime soon? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, today's price action was disappointing because there was a good chance that Nifty can conquer its 20-day moving average because of lots of positivity. Global cues were supportive, and US bond yields also fell in last 2 days. But now, if Nifty breaks 19,300, then we can expect further sell-off, and there is chance that we may see pressure in afternoon. There is some pressure in Dow future and Nasdaq future from higher levels. Nasdaq future is higher just because of the Nvidia. Otherwise, Dow future has pulled up from higher levels.
Hi Santosh, so I read this very interesting report today that Michael Burry, who is known for the Big Short film and betting against the US housing market before the great financial crash, now he's betting against the two key indices, Nasdaq and S&P, and it seems that he has taken a 1.6 billion bearish position in both index. So can we expect some sort of impact on Indian markets as well because of that?
Yes, we can expect. He may not always right, but if he will be right, then if global market fall, then definitely Indian markets will also fall. So we can't remain in isolation for a long time, but we will outperform in the longer time. If there will be any correction because of the global reason, that will be a good buying opportunity because Indian markets are in the structural bull run, and it will last for next 5 to 10 years. We will see intermediate correction, but this correction will be a good buying opportunity.
Santosh, I have another question for you. Now, SBI Funds is said to be bolstering its cash holdings, and as it expects RBI to, hike interest rates once again, given that inflation continues to be a concern for the market. Now, can retail investors adopt a similar approach of holding cash rather than investing in stocks right now?
Yes, as we can see that we are seeing some correction from higher levels, and we have seen big outperformance from broader markets. So there is a growth in broader market. So we can expect some cool off in broader market. So we will get a better opportunity, and this is a good time to exit your mistakes. Like if you have bought any wrong stock, so this is an opportunity to exit, and from lower levels you will get an opportunity to enter in quality stocks. So keep some case, keep your order dry for timing, and you will get a good opportunity from lower levels.
All right, stay with us, Santosh. We also want to quickly get my colleague here to perhaps take us through the top sectors that you were tracking. Suyash, run us through the top sectors, the indices, how they performed this afternoon.
So Shweta, Nifty IT was actually an outperformer today. I saw today's segment also. Karthik was talking about how
Nifty
IT sector has performed and bucked the trend in the last few sessions. And one of the reasons why the IT pack was in focus because Goldman Sachs has initiated coverage on 6 heavyweight IT stocks now, including TCS and Infosys. Another sector that was in focus today was Nifty Realty. It was up about 0.2%, and Nifty FMCG, which was up about 0.29%. But we saw some weakness in the Nifty banking space. It ended almost flat at about 0.04% gains, and the sector itself has underperformed Nifty over the past 30 months. Now, Nifty Bank is down about 4% in the last 30 days, whereas Nifty is more or less flat. So that is one of the sectors that I think we should talk about.
All right, Nifty Bank and Nifty PSU Bank perhaps also down by about 0.65% this afternoon. Santosh, how do you explain this? PSU banks, of course, have been given good returns to their investors over time. Is this some sort of correction that's happening in the markets?
Yes, most of the PSU stocks are outperforming, and as well as PSU banks. But we have to wait if there are signs of correction or not. If Nifty PSU bank start to correct, then we can expect some profit booking. Like if Nifty PSU bank index will slip below 45,050 level, which is its 20-day moving average, then we can expect a correction in PSU basket. But I will say if you will get any correction, then it will be buying opportunity because the overall outlook is still bullish. But stick with top 3 banks like SBI, Bank of Baroda, and Canara Bank.
And Santosh, Nifty IT, now IT pack has been one of the laggards this year, but now we are seeing some sort of a buying interest in the pack with heavyweights stock also seeing some buying action. What's your outlook on Nifty IT and IT stocks in general?
Yes, if you look at the IT stocks, you will see a divergence between the mid cap and large cap. Yes, we are seeing some buying in Infosys, TCS as well, but the broader stocks like today Coforge, L&T Technology, Emphasis, they are outperforming. So the mid cap stocks from IT packs are doing well. The large cap stocks are consolidating or underperforming, and I believe Nifty IT index is near an important resistance level 31,500. So if it fails to cross this level, then we can expect some profit booking in Nifty IT stocks as well, especially in large cap counters. So I think they may remain sideways for one more this quarter. Ahead of next quarter, we may see some buying interest from lower level. But for timing, large cap IT stocks may consolidate, mid cap and small cap IT stocks may continue to outperform.
What about the metal pack? Now crude prices are rising. Will it have some impact on that? Do you expect some correction there?
Yes, metal stocks are looking a little tricky actually. Despite the rise in dollar index and US bonds, they didn't fall too much, but they are not railing. They are wait and watch mode. They are anticipating some kind of stimulus from China. If something will come from China, then we can see a dead cat bounce, a temporary bounce back in metal counter. But at higher levels, there will be risk of profit booking because China is struggling. So metal stocks don't have clear picture, but they may remain sideways. From higher levels, we may see selling pressure. But if anything comes from China, then we may see a temporary bounce back in metal stocks.
All right, let's also quickly understand the top gainers and losers, Suyash.
Certainly, Shweta. So, if you're talking about the top gainers today in the Nifty pack, it was BPCL which logged about 1.93% gains in today's session. Asian Paints, which has been under pressure for the past month, has seen some buying interest this week, and even today it was among the top gainers in the pack. It was up about 1.78%. IndusInd Bank outperformed the majority of of other listed banks, it was up about 1.26. Infosys, on the back of, as I mentioned earlier, Goldman Sachs initiating a coverage on the stock, and it has a buy rating on Infosys with a target price of about 1600, which gives a potential scope of upside of about 12%. So that's why Infosys was also up. Britannia was up about 1% as well. Now, if we are talking about losers, among losers was Jio Financial Services. Now you must be wondering why Jio Financial is still in the Nifty pack. The stock was supposed to be dropped from the Nifty and Sensex both benchmarks yesterday, but at least as far as Sensex is concerned, it will be dropped on August 28th. Nifty has not given a timeline for the exit, so it was down for the fourth consecutive session. It was stuck in the lower circuit and it was down about 5%. Reliance was also among one of the losers today. Reliance saw some buying interest earlier in the morning after we heard that QIA's investment in its retail arm, but then we saw some profit booking there and it was down about 1.84%. Among other losers were DV's Lab, Power Grid and ONGC, which all of them were down about 1%.
All right, and Geofin, let's quickly get in Santosh to also weigh in on Geofin, the Jio Financial Services wing of Reliance. It continues to be a bummer for third consecutive days. Of course, this will eventually go away. There will be a correction. In fact, we've spoken to analysts who believe, who are literally banking heavily on this stock, saying it is going to be a buy,
but
it is going to be an outperformer. When is the question, Santosh? Exactly.
Yes, actually, the reason behind the correction is because before the discovery price was higher than anticipation, because analysts were expecting around 180 to 200, but the discovery price was around 260. That's why we are seeing some mean reversion. But around 200 level, it will stabilize. But I think investors who have long-term view more than 2 to 3 years should buy this stock. Otherwise, it may consolidate, it may remain sideways, because for timing there is no clarity about business model and all this. But you know that the pedigree is very strong and strong distribution network. So long-term outlook is bullish, and I'm watching for Reliance upcoming AGM if they will talk about its future plan. So long-term investors should hold it, but as a short-term trader or with a 1 year view, you should avoid.
So you're bullish on the long-term prospects of the company. Of course, we need some clarity on what the business model of JFS will be, and I mean, we hope that we'll get some clarity in the upcoming AGM meeting. But at current prices also, Jio Financials is trading at a substantial discount to its peers like Bajaj Finance, which has a price to book value of 8%. And still we are seeing some profit booking. So is it just passive funds that are selling the stocks and active mutual funds also, or retail participants are also willing to wait on the sideline before entering the stock?
Actually, retail participants stuck at high level after listing. Everyone was going to go to buy this stock because of the strong pedigree. But yes, there is some adjustment from mutual funds. So that's why we are seeing selling pressure. But as for timing, it is difficult to give any particular valuation and compare with other peers. But yes, definitely long-term outlook is bullish. So this correction is a buying opportunity for the long-term investors. So it is difficult for me to justify valuation as of now.
Santosh, I just have one more question in regards to JFS. Now, JFS will be excluded. I mean, the expectation is that it will be dropped from Sensex on August 28th. What will be the impact on the benchmark indices? Will we see some sort of a correction because of exclusion of JFS from the Nifty and Sensex indices?
Yes, it will be interesting to see. But first, if today again we have seen a lower circuit, the Jio Financial Services. So T+3 after opening of lower circuit, we will see exclusion from Nifty as well. So there will be some impact because around 5% valuation of Reliance, total market cap of Reliance will come out. So it might have impact of 50 to 100 points. But we may see some adjustment in other stocks, like if the money will come out from Jio Financial Services, then it will flow into other stocks. So yes, there will be some impact on the index as well.
All right, and before I let you go, I think Reliance has been in focus this afternoon and this morning as well. We discussed the fresh rounds of investments that are coming in from the Qatar Investment Authority, but the stock is down by approximately 1.8%. Let's pull up that chart once again. What explains the stock performance?
Yes, after listing of Geo Financial Services, the stock is under pressure and around 2550 to 2600 there was a supply zone that's and a strong resistance area. That's why we are seeing some selling pressure. As of now, 2450 is it's for 50-day moving average where it may take support, but if it slips below 2450, then we can expect more pressure in coming days. I believe 2350, which will be around 200 moving average, will be a good entry area for a trader or for a short-term investor.
All right, let's quickly also shift focus to a story that we are tracking by the way of Chandrayaan landing in South Pole, making India the first country to land in an uncharted territory in Moon. It is a cause of celebration, joy, and many stocks are also at an all-time high. In fact, 52-week high on the back of that news. A lot of stocks that we continue to track at this point in time, some of them as high as 12%, Suyash.
Yes, Shweta. So, I mean, if we look at India did achieve a massive feat yesterday by being the first country to land on the south pole of the moon, and while ISRO gets all the credit, there were several Indian companies that contributed and helped ISRO achieve that massive feat. Now if we look at the companies that helped ISRO achieve this dream, there are about 10 companies that we were tracking earlier in this morning. Paras Defense, which supplied navigation systems for Chandrayaan-3. Now it was up about 5% yesterday and it rallied as much as 12% in morning trade, but we saw some profit booking amid weakness in the broader markets and the stock settled at about 7.28%. Now MTAR Technologies is another one. MTAR Technologies provided ISRO with engine and booster pumps for Chandrayaan-3's launch vehicle. Now the shares ended about 5% higher yesterday. Today also we saw about a 4% rally in that stock. Hindustan Aeronautics, a story that we have been uncovering over the past few weeks, and the multi-bagger stock was also behind providing ISRO with essential expertise as far as it comes to the Chandrayaan-3 mission. Mishra Dhatu Nigam was another company which provide ISRO with critical materials such as cobalt-based alloys, nickel-based alloys, and special steel for various components of the launch mission. Now the stock was trading higher in today's session, but we saw some profit booking over there, and it was down about 2%. Bharat Heavy Electricals, L&T, Bharat Electronics, Centum, Avantel, Godrej, all have been performing really well. If you can pull up the 1-year charts, Shweta, you will see most of these stocks have given massive returns to investors in comparison to the benchmark indices. HAL is up about 80%, Bharat Heavy Electricals is about 100%, so a multi-bagger story over there. Avantel, Shweta, 361% return since in the last 12 months. Bharat Electronics is 34% up. L&T, which is a heavyweight stock, it is up about 44% compared to Nifty's about 10% rally.
All right, so aerospace, defense stocks there to watch out for, Santosh. I mean, looking at this chart, with some of these numbers are staggering. Avantel up about 361%. I believe these are year-to-date numbers, Suyash. This is not the one-year performance?
These are 12-month returns. So
these
from August
months.
24 to 2022 to August 24,
All right, so 1-year returns there and a 3-figure return at that. Yeah, I believe with this, I suppose it is time for aerospace defense companies to shine.
Santosh,
Santosh?
can we have your thoughts?
Pardon?
So, I mean,
Okay,
the stocks have
fine.
space.
So,
Yeah, please go ahead.
yes, actually. Yes, stocks have all of the stocks have already rallied too much, but still the valuation comfort is still there. The long-term outlook is bullish. But yes, after this event, we may see some profit booking. We have seen in today's session actually from higher levels, stocks have corrected. First of all, you can see the costing of Chandrayaan-3 was around 615 crore, which is less than most of the budget of the Hollywood movies, and that's why it's India is giving competitive launch and it is opening the doors for more launch. And in coming days, we are going to launch mission for Sun and main moon mission. So I think the outlook is bullish for all the companies. But yes, as a trader, you should avoid after chasing this stock after a massive run-up. If you get any correction or profit booking, that will be a good buying opportunity. My preferred bet will remain like HL is our top pick still after a strong rally, and AMTA, L&T Technology. This stock should be on your radar. If you get any correction, then it will be a good buying opportunity for you.
But what's your position on these stocks as of today?
Yes,
Santosh?
we are still bullish on this.
Yes.
Yes, we are bullish on this stock, but yes, I would suggest to book some profit booking if you are a trader. But if you are an investor, hold on to this stock. And if you are looking for fresh entry for the investment, wait for a correction. You will get good levels. If market give any, if because of the any reason, global reason, or if market witness any correction, that will be a good opportunity to buy these stocks.
What are the stocks that are looking inexpensive at this moment, Santosh?
Yes, if you look at the PE ratio, then MTAR will look expensive to you, but still the quality of the business model is good, so it will remain expensive. But if you get any correction, if you get any 15 to 20% correction, then it will be a good buying opportunity. HL is, despite so much run-up, valuation are still comfortable. However, it is trading higher than its long-term averages. So if you get any correction around 10 to 15%, then HL is also a good entry point.
Now these companies, can they also cater to the global space market as well?
Yes, as I told you, the total cost of the Chandrayaan mission was 615 crores, so which is less than many Hollywood movies, and India is giving a cost competitive launch cost. So definitely, other nations will also look towards India for such kind of missions. So that will open the doors for our companies, for the global market as well.
All right, good news there all in all, not just for the aero defense sector, aerospace sector, but also for India
For
as a
us.
whole, and for us, a reason to celebrate for some of the, these companies whose stock performance, I think, shooting through the roof.
300% Avantel has run up over the last 1 year.
Avantel. So all in all, I think we're going to end this segment on a joyous note. Santosh Meena, thanks very much for joining with your inputs. Suyash, thanks for your inputs on that important story, but we're going to shift focus for now. Brazil has called for the BRICS nations to create a common currency for trade and investment between each other so as to reduce their vulnerability to dollar exchange rate fluctuations. The proposal was made at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. In fact, yesterday, Brazil's president said that nations that don't use dollars should be not forced to trade in the currency. Remember, de-dollarization has been gaining momentum for a while now, with India making strides in pushing for its own currency and succeeding at it. We'll discuss India's bids there, but also BRICS currency is an interesting proposal, one with its own set of political, fiscal, geographical challenges. Is it possible to have a common BRICS currency? We'll find out. Karthik joining us here in the newsroom. Karthik, interesting. BRICS saying we want a common currency, but not all nations will agree. BRICS plus Ethiopia, not all of them will agree because they have their own separate set of challenges. But run us through what the proposal is to begin with.
So, Shweta, I think, this came up because there were announcements both in Russia and China and some quarters in those two countries suggesting that on the agenda in Johannesburg, South Africa, is a common currency, or a framework at least for a common currency between the BRICS nations. Remember, the BRICS nations originally being Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So a common currency between these 5 nations. Some quarters reported that this is a common BRICS currency is going to be on agenda, but India had summarily dismissed that idea. In fact, Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra, as well as last month Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, had said that there is no question of, leave alone an agenda, there is no question of a common currency framework within this bloc. And you're right. I mean, having a common currency or dethroning the dollar, of course, is a far cry. It's not easy. And neither would I suspect is it a recommended option that you have a common currency. And look at the mix of BRICS. Let's just look at the original mix of BRICS and come to the new members subsequently. You've got Russia. Russia is under Western sanctions. The Russian ruble is pretty much a piece of paper if you want to trade anywhere in the West, like is the dollar in Russia. You don't really have any value of the dollar because you cannot transact in dollar. In fact, Russia is not even part of the SWIFT code anymore. So you can't even, it's taken the SWIFT as a mechanism which communicates between banks for transferring exchange of transactions of money across denominations, across currencies, has discarded Russia from the SWIFT payment mechanism. So that is challenge number 1. what is the value of the Russian ruble today, and does it make sense for India to follow the same value? Or vice versa, what is the value of the Indian rupee today against the dollar, and does it make sense for Russia to have the same value or a common currency therein? Look at the problems that China is facing. China's currency has been devalued, trade in China is down, unemployment is high, inflation is low. Currency has a very direct impact on all these geopolitical as well as macroeconomic issues. Now, if there is inflation in India and there is deflation in China, and imagine the two countries having the same currency, what do? Do you tighten or do you loosen?
Interesting.
Right. Now, compare this with, let's say, the Eurozone. Europe has a common currency called the euro, and that euro, because of the geographical alignment, because of close proximity between these nations, trade of Europe versus rest of the world using the same channels, input, output, going through the same little continent of Europe, it is far easier for a Europe to have a common currency. But we've seen what has happened even with Brexit, for example. The pound was never part of euro. The Swiss franc was never part of the euro. So there are individual nations, individual states which have their own place politically, geopolitically, geographically, and from an economic trade standpoint. So it's next to impossible to expect that countries as diverse as India, China, Russia, leave alone Brazil for now, leave alone South Africa for now, even Russia, China and India, to have a common currency, and that currency allowing members of these three diverse countries to transact with the rest of the world at the same equal level playing field is next to impossible. Now, of course, we had put this discussion, this conversation to bed when we got the statement of our Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra that there is no agenda on a common currency. And economists the worldwide had also shunned this idea that, you know, it can't really happen. Until yesterday when Vladimir Putin decides to, in his video address at the BRICS summit, decide to rake up this issue again. Now, he's coming from a very different school of thought. It obviously makes sense for Russia to have an alternative to the dollar. It makes sense perhaps to some limit for China to have an alternative to the US dollar. Remember, China had also decoupled its currency. It wasn't a free float. China had enough and more levers available in its own monetary framework to be able to de-link the movements of the yuan with the dollar. So it has in the past operated with some degree of flexibility and some degree of capital control to not let the movements of the dollar or the demand supply of the dollar impact its own currency. That's not the case with India. India is asking countries and companies the worldwide to come invest in India, right? That trade is still denominated by the dollar. India itself has been trying to settle trade bills with Russia in the Indian rupee. That hasn't happened. So you're trying to circumvent the dollar because it'll otherwise come into Western sanctions. But the point is, I think the agenda at BRICS should have been, if perhaps it still might be, to push for trade settlement in local currencies as opposed to trade settlement across countries using the US dollar and not really push for a common currency, because it's virtually impossible in the times that we live in and the different geopolitical tensions and economic imbalances in this entire bloc, leave alone the rest of the world or the expanded bloc with the addition of 6 new members including Egypt and Ethiopia, Argentina, etc. It's going to be next to impossible for a common currency to exist in this bloc.
I suppose the entire conversation, the idea of the conversation revolved around having trade settlements in their
local currencies,
own local currencies, and hence the idea of a common currency was floated. But you're right, given the differences, the geographical differences, not just political differences, if we were to set that aside for once, the geographical differences also make it next to impossible to have a currency which can be traded between all of these countries, but perhaps on the idea of de-dollarization, and we've been discussing that here on Newsline. I'm hoping that you can weigh in on that. India's been pushing for de-dollarization. Russia, of course, has an agenda because its ruble does not hold any value if it's to be exchanged in dollar. Can't happen anymore. So the idea on an individual level, do you see India has met with some success there? Because we've done so with Bangladesh. We've sort of we've settled, and in the latest we've also settled trade with the UAE. So that perhaps is a fresh move and India is succeeding at that.
I mean, see, Shweta, you know, it's all very jingoistic and nationalistic to believe that, hey, we have the power to dethrone the dollar, or we want the dollar dominance to end. It's far from, you know,
reality.
far from reality and far from any sort of success in terms of fruition of that dream as well. So, number one, does it make sense to even have a lofty dream like that? What happens tomorrow if you have a balance of payment crisis like you had in the early 1990s? It led to liberalization, but it actually also led to whatever gold reserves, physical gold reserves that India's central bank, the RBI, had to be physically shipped to the Bank of England. Right? That is the kind of hedging India had to do to seek a loan from IMF. Or World Bank if I'm not mistaken, right? So you needed that sort of hedging to be done for your gold to be physically lifted and taken to another central bank for you to get a little loan. Now what happens if you have a balance of payment crisis again? You de-link yourself with the dollar completely. The forex reserves of the US dollar to the tune of about $600 billion that the RBI has right now is going to be will work in the terms of, let's say, Shaktikanta Das himself. What he mentioned yesterday is that it's an umbrella. You are free to open that umbrella when it begins to rain, when it begins to pour. You have that cover of a dominant world currency called the US dollar to cover for any exigency where you want to create or you want to contain any volatility in your own currency. You can sell or you can buy the US dollar using Indian rupees. The second problem with the Indian rupee is that unlike China and of course unlike the US dollar itself, we don't have a complete capital control over the Indian rupee. For example, if you were to travel to the UK, you can't pay 2,000 rupees in cash to get 20 pounds. You've got to first convert the 2,000 rupees cash to the US dollar and then convert the US dollar to an equivalent amount in pounds, right? And that is the case across the world. Euro, you know, any other currency that you want to buy apart from the US dollar, you don't have complete capital control to convert the Indian rupee into any other currency. Now, coming back to the central currency idea and the fact that, you know, is there merit in exploring a common currency for the BRICS, which I think is honestly an absurd idea, simply because where is the central bank going to be placed? Are we happy to be part of a central BRICS currency with the central bank controlling that currency in Beijing, right? Or in St. Petersburg, or in Moscow, or in Johannesburg? I don't think so.
It doesn't seem feasible.
I don't think so. Would they be happy with the central bank residing in India? Not at all. So the whole idea of a common currency,
trade, the idea of a common currency does not merit a discussion.
Not in a disparate group like the BRICS, and it gets even more disparate with the invitation.
So the idea of therefore dethrowing dollar, is there some merit to the idea, or is it just in the realm of, oh, okay, let's be, you know, chest thumping jingoists and let's try and dethrone dollar? Can we dethrone dollar?
There is merit in trade settlement in local currency, simply because if you were to settle trade using the Indian rupee, there is greater demand to buy Indian rupees from the rest of the world. The rest of the world will, if the rest of the world is willing to pay India in the Indian rupee, then it is buying Indian rupees. And if it is buying Indian rupees, the value of the Indian rupee goes high, just like the stock markets. You buy a stock, you buy a currency, the value goes up. Now, if the value goes up, that value pegged against the dollar, you get to buy more US dollars in lesser amount of Indian rupees. So, overall, the concept is great in theory, right? It'll be wonderful to have more rupee transactions, rupee denominated transactions with the rest of the world. But dethroning the dollar, you know, even in my lifetime, if I can sort of, you know, take that, stick my neck out and say, seems
not
like
happening.
A very, very distant dream.
Far-fetched.
Yeah, totally far-fetched.
Is there even a need for a common currency beyond dollar?
See,
is the
I
question.
think Russia wants the
But
US
Russia
dollar's
has a vested
hegemony to
interest.
end, right?
Absolutely.
Given what Russia is facing right now, the sanctions, right? It still has to trade with the world.
So the non-Western allies, of course, want an alternative to the dollar, but it's not happening for other Western institutions. Also, as far as, you know, global lending institutions is concerned, as far as they continue to lend in dollars, I don't see dollar being dethroned at any point of time.
Absolutely. See, it's dollar denominated. So, you know, I mean, at some point you could possibly cash in those dollars and convert them into the local currency.
But you've got
the
to
calculation is based on dollar terms, right? So they are lending dollars to your central bank, which then converts that into rupee for disbursement or for utilization across the country. But yeah, I think coming back back to your root question, Russia has got a vested interest. Now, it's also a function of how much trade is there within this bloc. Euro was a very different example because you had interlinkages between Russia,
and
between France, between
trade.
Spain. There was free-flowing trade because of road connectivity, railway connectivity, movement of goods, services, passengers, citizens. That movement was there. So you could take a bus ride from one country to another and use the same currency.
Absolutely.
Now, with the trade between these blocks also not at par with, let's say, China continues to be the central trade partner for India, for Russia, for South Africa, for Brazil, but outside of China, there's hardly any trade between the remaining 4 countries.
Right.
And now add 6 more to that block and increase the confusion for the currency.
And it's a whole lot of confusion. So the idea of BRICS currency there, of course, looks very far-fetched. But remember, a proposal was put in at the BRICS summit in Joburg, which is currently on, where Brazil president, batted for the idea of a common currency. We don't know whether that's going to happen or not. Still very initial phase, but we're going to shift focus back to India. The electric two-wheeler segment that we continue to track is once again buzzing after complaints from consumers about non-receipt of reimbursement for off-board charges. The central government has now asked at least 4 defaulting OEMs like Ola, Ather, TVS Motors and Hero MotoCorp to pay a combined total of 278 crore rupees to around 200,000 customers by the end of November. The move comes on the heels of a discovery which was made by Ministry of Heavy Industries that a mere 10 crore rupees of the total 288 crore owed by OEMs has been disbursed to consumers as of 15th of August. Also, in a final ditch attempt to arrive at a solution to the ongoing contention between the Department of Heavy Industries and the two-wheeler EV makers, the SMEV, which is the Society of Manufacturers of Electric Vehicles, has presented a two-pronged solution as opposed to budging to the notice directing 12 OEMs to either repay the entire subsidy amount back to the government or face penal action. We'll try and understand what is happening and also play a documentary that we made here, Karthik, on Newsline, trying to understand what exactly is hurting electric two-wheeler segment. But what we know so far is that some of these companies have finally said, or at least the representation of these companies has finally said, all right, let's arrive at a solution. Let's end this deadlock on whether we should pay back the subsidy to you or not. At the same time, government has now directed them to pay an upward of 200 crore rupees to the customers that they owe money to.
And some of these players, to add to that, Shweta, some of these electric two-wheeler manufacturers are actually telling the government that, hey, we have paid that subsidy back to the customers. We haven't pocketed it. So it might be a better idea for MHI to go to the customers and ask them to refund. Now, which customer in his right mind is actually going to heed to a notice or a call from the government asking to repay whatever the 60,000 rupees rebate that they got? I mean, if it is a diktat from the government, if it is something, a directive that comes, an order that comes from the government, obviously they'll have to comply. But the idea just seems so foolhardy that the EV manufacturers are actually telling the government that, hey, we have paid the money to the customers by way of subsidies, and now they are the owners of that subsidized amount,
so
and go and take it from them. Technically, they are not wrong. They haven't kept that money. They have offloaded
at least that's what
subsidy.
They are saying.
Yeah, I mean, from whatever is out there in the open, at least, that they haven't kept that money. That subsidy has been passed on. And if that subsidy has been passed on, why should the two-wheeler industry pay that wrongfully credited subsidy back to the government?
But as far as charger is concerned, government is now asking OEMs, because they haven't dispersed the money back to the customers. They were not supposed to charge for the two-wheeler electric charger, which they did. Government is now saying pay at least 278 crores back to the customers that you have wrongfully got from them.
Of course. So I think chargers and software also, I think some update to the software. This the government had said early on that this is part of the core product. You can't charge customers separately for this, because I mean, EV makers and in general entrepreneurs are also smart. They want to charge whatever extra they can from the customer. So while the scooter was subsidized and that subsidy was passed on, they kept the price of the scooter under 1,50,000, but 1,50,000, but sold the charger separately so that at least they get the full amount of the charger. So yeah, that of course has to be refunded.
And if you're confused on what we are discussing, what is the contention between the government and two-wheeler EV players, let's quickly apprise you of all of the ongoing problems that two-wheeler EV players have with the government, and what exactly are they facing with each other. They are up against each other, both of them for that matter. Let's play up that documentary that should clear all the airs for you.
Right now, we just need oxygen, which means we need money in the bank.
1,600 crore rupees of pending subsidies.
And sale is not happening, so let's subsidize 30-40%. It does not work that way.
You have to address to the issues in the entire ecosystem.
India's electric mobility dream was born from the need to reduce our oil import bill that touched a high of almost $160 billion last fiscal. But the challenge was that very few would buy electric vehicles that would cost almost 30 to 40% more than regular internal combustion engine powered vehicles, unless, of course, they were subsidized.
First challenge which was there is to have electric vehicles in at least a sizable amount so that it can be seen, it can be experienced, and people can build confidence on that.
Ultimately, it meant that customer has to take electric vehicle adoption first, which means he has to find some merit in it.
Whenever you are going to attempt at the change in the behavior of consumers, that's a big change, because now you want them to shift from ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine vehicles, to that of electric mobility. So in that case, you have to address to the issues in the entire ecosystem.
Every focus and attention was how to make it cheaper. Cheaper means import duties were brought down. Government helped so much, from 15% to 0% for electrical components. And then they started giving incentive to customer also.
These subsidies came in the hands of the consumers through the now rather defamed FAME scheme, faster adoption and manufacturing of EVs. In its first phase, scooters were subsidized up to 29,000 rupees. It gave some hope, but then in 2019, FAME-2 made a big commitment, a 10,000 crore rupee outlay to subsidize end users up to 40% of the retail price. So, electric scooters worth 1.5 lakh rupee had the government funded subsidy discount of 60,000 rupees.
When industry, which is conventionally a ICE engine industry, they had to come and they have to set up an entire range or assembly line of electric vehicle.
Incentives were given primarily, they were thought of so that the demand could be generated. Once the demand is generated, then everybody, OEM and everybody, they will start manufacturing. But there has to be a set of people who should be demanding for a particular vehicle type.
Obviously, as expected, demand soared and industry had to scale up and produce in equal measure. Electric scooters marked 1 million in sales in financial year 23, well on target to more than double their sales to 2.4 million in financial year 24. But just as cheers began, a short circuit blew the fuse on many EV makers.
Suddenly came from somewhere a localization milestone, which was impossible to achieve in the realm of judgments, because at that time at the association level we found, what has that come from, that in 4 months of announcement of FAME-2 you should localize the battery, for example. The battery being such a complex item and so much of fire incident, unsafe incident, any brand like ours or many other brands at that time just simply thought of, what is this? In 4 months how can you localize a battery which takes 5 years to develop, 3 years to develop?
If you want to be global manufacturing hub, then certain quality parameters with respect to the vehicle, the automobile components, the battery, everything has to be maintained. They have to be in the top gear. Now, at the same time, there has to be growing, gradually improving local value addition.
So many of us at that point of time say we will not localize. We cannot have haphazard localization. We will have to go back to Exide and tell them to do it. We are not making batteries, or to Bosch or others, and they are saying 2 years, and they are saying first produce volumes of 2 lakh, then we will invest. Some of us mostly, they wrote import, we will continue to import. And those products are always certified from MHI's certifying agency. So when this product went, they were with imported batteries. They were tested as imported batteries against what was FAME's guideline of local. And the certification also came as imported batteries. And we started getting subsidy on the imported batteries, and that continued for 2 years, 3 years. And then because of some letter from somewhere, government went back on their words of allowing imported batteries and say you should have localized at that point of time as per the FAME guideline.
EV makers such as Hero Electric and Okinawa and 5 others were barred from participating in the FAME subsidy scheme any further. But the real blow came from the government asking them to pay back the subsidy amount disbursed thus far, 400 crore rupees.
There were probably 13 of them who were put into kind of screening, that whether the product which they are selling, that conforms to the quality parameters for which FAME incentives have been given or not. 6 or 7, as 13 is the number, who did not qualify. So they have been put into kind of, for them, they too have been given an option that whatever subsidies you have taken till now, that you will have to return.
The Society of Manufacturers of Electric Vehicles allege that the government is holding back funds. They are yet to receive 1,200 crore rupees worth of FAME subsidy, even as EV makers have passed on those subsidies to consumers. Add to that additional 400 crore rupees that the government is asking EV makers to refund to the government. We are now talking about 1,600 crore rupees of pending subsidies. This has the potential to kill many EV makers while the industry is still in its infancy.
Today time for us is running out by the hour. Right now we just need oxygen, which means we need money in the bank. So if you owe 1,600 crores, give us 1,000 crores at least to all the players, so that they can start limping back to some operation, some production, some sales, so the business can start, the families can have their salaries back, the workers can be back into the factory, the network can be having some optimism, and then we discuss with you how much is due. We're not running away.
From my point of view, if I say why even it was subsidized, it may be personal, but it's right to say it was wrongly placed. We cannot just focus on that some manufacturing is happening and sale is not happening, so let's subsidize 30-40%. It does not work that way. When it was required to bring couple of vehicles and nobody is there to be the taker, it was right to give some subsidy to some vehicle sales. But now when we are growing, the demand of vehicle is increasing, we need more people to manufacture.
In May 2023, FAME-2 was once again revised. The revisions dropped the subsidy on the electric two-wheelers to 10,000 per kilowatt from existing 15,000 rupee per kilowatt. And the maximum subsidy cap was also revised downward from a 40% to 15%. Prices went up, sales dwindled. Electric scooter sales halved to under 46,000 units in June itself.
We haven't produced for the last 4 months because our new products, which were 100% genuinely localized with the best of Indian suppliers like Nidec Japan and all Bosch and ILRs and so many, they are also under the same cloud that we will not allow even for the new genuine products to be loaded onto the NAP portal. So that is a type of an attitude that, okay, past is to be resolved separately, the future should be okay, but no, everything is being swept under one. So it's a log jam where all my hands are tied at the back.
GPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today?
All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies. A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now. Akshay Kumar makes his Marathi film debut in Mahesh Manjrekar's Vedat Marathi Veer Daudale Sa. What's inspired Khiladi Kumar to foray into new terrain? Playing iconic Maratha king Shivaji Maharaj, he's jumping on a bandwagon that spells magic on the box office. Why are filmmakers in a rush to chronicle the life and times of Shivaji Maharaj?
Why do we feel the hunger, the need? Why are we compelled to make a film on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj? And that too so many films. For a simple reason, he was the people's king.
So I think there's this herd mentality in the film industry. One film clicks, then there's a line of producers who announce films with similar storylines.
Personality that has not been adequately explored on the big screen.
I think among filmmakers the craze is because the Marathi audience is somehow inclined to seeing films about the life and times of Shivaji Maharaj, and several films in the recent past based on his life or based on some chapter of his life have done well, you know.
Now we see in the last 10 to 15 years that historical subjects have made a remarkable comeback. So here is a personality and a remarkable personality that hasn't been explored in the new era. I think that's the reason a lot of filmmakers are tapping into Chhatrapati Shivaji's life in order to depict it on the big screen and on OTT platforms and other such platforms. One other factor that is also responsible for this series of movies on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is that ever since Prime Minister Narendra Modi's dispensation has come in 2014, there have been previously neglected historical figures around whom there has been plenty of discussion, whether it is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, whether it's Veer Savarkar, whether it's Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
The rising number of films on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is also directly linked with the current political mood in Maharashtra.
So we have been depending on these stories which are borrowed. Our heroes have been borrowed, our icons have been borrowed. Where are our real icons? Where are our real heroes? It is high time that we go back to our text, our scriptures, our history.
A film with authentic history of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. I am damn sure that it will be one of the biggest hit ever of Bollywood industry.
Shivaji Maharaj's valorization in pop culture began in the 1970s.
Most of the 8 films released in the last 2 years have been successful. Pawan Khend, of course, was a huge hit. but most of the films based on the life of Chhatrapati Shivaji have done well at the box office. So I think this is the primary reason why so many films are being made.
When we talk about the history of India, so very conveniently we are made to forget the Maratha Empire period. Very conveniently, what are we told, and what have, as a kid, what have I studied? Okay, there used to be Mughals and then Britishers came, right? So this is what we have been taught. What a huge lie it is, what a blatant lie and shameless lie it is. So between the Mughals and the Britishers, there was Maratha Empire, and it was huge, it was humongous. It qualifies for being called one of the biggest samrajyas of